Hello, this is Geopolitical and you are watching Syriana Analysis. A lot of developments happened in the last week. So after liberating Yarmouk camp and Hajar al-Aswad, Damascus, the capital of Syria, is 100% free of terrorism, and by liberating these areas, the Syrian army is now able to connect the capital of Syria with Homs and Hama, waiting now for the negotiations in Astana and Sochi in order to ease the tensions in Idlib, and hence reopening the highway that connects Hama, Idlib to Aleppo. But nothing is confirmed and nothing is guaranteed because Turkey till the moment is maneuvering and trying to gain time and trying to gain more and more on the ground that I will come through in the next few minutes. So as I mentioned, Damascus is now free of terrorism, and by liberating the entire capital of Syria from the Islamist armed groups, the Syrian army sent a lot of reinforcement to the southern front, namely into Daraa, to this green part, in order to practice pressure on the Islamist militants that are in control of this area, I believe, more than 5 years. However, there are a lot of developments on the international level, especially that Israel is promoting the narrative that Syria is relying on the Iranian forces to liberate this area. However, according to my information, there is only military advisors from Iran accompanying the Syrian army into Daraa, and they will have no combating duties on the ground. However, what Israel did has benefited Syria. I will explain you how is that, because Israel raised the issue of the Iranian forces in Daraa and said that their presence is forbidden and that Israel will take action, and Israel sent a delegation to Moscow, and there were marathon negotiations between Russia and Israel, and Syria was sending its concerns and its strategy to the Russian side in order to ensure the national security of Syria in this particular part. Now, what we are getting from certain reports that Israel will not retaliate against the Syrian army if the Syrian army alone advances into this area. However, the Syrian army also, or the Syrian side also, put another condition for that, which is that the Americans should withdraw from this area because they have a military base, illegal military base in this area, and they are occupying all this green part in order to disconnect Syria from Iraq and also from Jordan. So these two states, United States is trying to prevent Syria from connecting itself geographically into its neighbors, namely Iraq and Jordan. However, in this regard, for example, I will mention what the Syrian foreign minister said only yesterday, that do not believe any statement on an agreement about the south of Syria unless the US forces withdraw from Al-Tanaf area. This is exactly what we are getting from underground sources, that Syria is putting a condition on the negotiation table that it will alone advance into Daraa if the Americans leave this area, and namely Al-Tanaf military base. So this could be a good bargaining or a good political and military achievement for Syria by securing the entire borders with Jordan, and after liberating Daraa and after liberating Al-Tanaf, and then connecting geographically connecting Syria with Jordan and Iraq. However, there are other developments that I want to mention here. For example, ISIS is in control of this very small area in the eastern shores of the Euphrates. And we all know that the eastern shores of the Euphrates, if we check the map, is in full control of the Americans. This yellow side is under the control of the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, and there are many American and French checkpoints and military bases in this area. So it's very ironic to see that ISIS, which is already a few 100 meters away from the American forces, they don't attack the American forces on the yellow side, but they try to cross the river into the western shores of the Euphrates in order to attack the Syrian army. However, the Syrian army was able to repel this attack and send them back. So some would ask why ISIS is still here, and why ISIS is still here, and why ISIS is still here. I will tell you that ISIS forces in this area are very weak, and they are surrounded by Syrian army forces, and in my opinion this area is finished, and ISIS cannot pose any credible threat to the Syrian army or to any allied forces in this area. This area only needs for the Syrian army to clean the area building by building, to try to demine the area, and things will be fine. However, the strongest ISIS presence in Syria is in this area, and also this tiny area that I already mentioned. But why the Americans are not kicking ISIS out of this area? Aren't they able to do it? Of course they are able to do it 100%, and if the American forces decide to kick ISIS out from this area, they will be able to do it within a couple of days. But the thing is, the Americans don't want to liberate this area and this area from ISIS, because their mission in Syria, in front of the international community, and in the sort of why the Americans formed this so-called US-led coalition against terrorism, is to combat ISIS. So if ISIS is finished, is over, they will have no more excuse to stay in Syria, and they know this game. That's why they are prolonging their stay in Syria by saying that there is ISIS in this area. However, they are absolutely able to finish on ISIS in a couple of days, but they are not doing it. So this was some of the developments in regards to ISIS, the United States, Syria, and Israel. However, in another issue which is correlated to this, the Syrian Tribes hold meeting against US presence in Syria, new military force formed to kick out foreign troops. So how would this happen? If we check some of the details of this report by Al-Masdar, a conference between the 70 tribes of Aleppo, Al-Raqqa, and Al-Hasake was held in government-held city of Deir Hafer in eastern Aleppo on Saturday. That means last Saturday. The name of the meeting was called Syrian Tribes Against Foreign Intervention and the American Presence on Syrian Soil. The tribal leaders announced the formation of a popular resistance unit that will fight alongside the Syrian Arab Army in a bid to liberate all Syrian lands and all foreign forces in Syria. According to a military source, the new force will make a direct move against the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, and US armed forces in eastern Syria. Now, if we see this report and try to remember what President Assad said only a few days ago on RT, that the priority is to negotiate with the SDF in order to hand over these areas to the Syrian army. But if the SDF didn't listen to the Syrian side, and if the Americans didn't leave this area, there will be no other option but to resist the American occupation forces, the French occupation forces, and behind them the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces. And what also the Walid al-Muallim said only yesterday, he also said, frankly, we haven't started negotiations with SDF. We still haven't tried the first option, that means negotiations. We will try the first option and then we will see. The communication is there, but we have not started to negotiate about the future. We still consider them Syrian citizens who care about their country as we do. So diplomacy is still on the table, and now the ball is in the side of the Kurds. And if we check also this meeting I bought from Twitter, it says a pro-Assad regime delegation made a visit to US-backed YPG Saturday after the Assad threatened to use force to retake areas held. So regardless of this report, which comes from a journalist, researcher, expert on Middle Eastern affairs, I believe he's a Turkish guy. He's a Turkish journalist. However, the communication with SDF and the other Kurdish militias has never been out of the table. The Syrian side always negotiated with the and communicated with the Kurds for the future of Syria, and now there will be advanced or attempt for advanced negotiation in order to find an arrangement of how will this entire yellow area will be ruled in the future, and how will be the shape of the political system in Syria, because the Syrian government, proposed or sent the names of 50 candidates from delegation from Syria in order to redraft the Syrian constitution under the supervision of the UN. And the Syrian foreign minister Walid al-Muallim also said that in any future negotiation in regards to the constitution, the majority must be to the Syrian government delegation, so that they would have more votes in any kind of changes on the constitution. However, even if all sides agreed on a certain constitution, it will be put for referendum in Syria. The last thing that happened in Syria, there are many things happened, but what I'm trying to cover is for today is the what's happening in Manbij. Manbij resides on the western side of the Euphrates, and Turkey always called that the Kurds, the presence of the Kurdish militias is a red line for them on the western side of the Euphrates. And only today the Americans and the Turks agreed they issued a joint statement saying that both sides fight terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. They considered, means the foreign ministers of Turkey and the US considered the recommendation of Turkey-US working group on Syria pertaining to the future of our bilateral cooperation in Syria on issues of mutual interest, to include taking steps to ensure the security and stability in Manbij. They endorsed a roadmap to this end and underlined their mutual commitment to its implementation, reflecting agreement to closely follow developments on the ground. What we know till the moment, there could be a mutual administration both by the Americans and the Turks in this area, with the condition of leaving the Turkish militias from Manbij to the eastern side of the Euphrates, but these reports are still unconfirmed and we are waiting what would happen. Now, some would ask, what's the position of the Syrian government? Turkey is occupying this green area and it could extend its control to Manbij. Let me remind you what the Walid al-Muallim, the foreign minister of Syria, said only yesterday. We consider Turkey to be an enemy and an invader. Neither Turkey nor the US have the right to negotiate regarding the Syrian cities. We will liberate every inch of our land. Some people might think this is only a cliches or some statements coming from Syria. This statement is coming from the highest official in the Syrian diplomacy or in the Syrian foreign ministry. And Syria, during the contemporary history and especially under the leaderships of both Hafez Assad and Bashar Assad, the Americans know that the Syrian leadership, they have the ability to cause a lot of troubles to the Americans, and especially that the presence of the Americans are illegal under international law, and also the Turkish troops are illegal under international law. And what this side should know, that the Syrian side is not in hurry to recapture these areas, and they are playing on the factor of the time, and they're benefiting from the time, from the changes of the international circumstances. Syria is benefiting from the changes on the international level, and also relying on its allies, namely Russia, Iran, Hezbollah, and other allies underground, in order to liberate every inch of Syria. So what I'm trying to say is, those could sound some cliches for non-Syrians, but clear-headed people, and especially the Syrians, they know that these are not cliches, and the battles and the war will continue both on the political and the military levels until every inch of Syria is liberated, including the occupied Golan Heights. And without the liberation of the entire Syrian Arab Republic, there could be no peace in Syria. Therefore, liberating Syria comes as a priority, even if that means through negotiations, because at the end, what we care about as Syrians is to have our territories back and to kick out the invaders, both the proxies and their masters from Syria. So this is everything for today. I hope you liked it. If you are enjoying my reports, please guys share this report with your friends, like and share on social media. And if you like to support my work, you can find the links in the description below, especially through patreon.com and PayPal. So this is Georg Almasyan, and you are watching Syriana Analysis.